Tonight, we will be partaking of a liquid repast as we wind our way up the Golden Mile, commencing with an inaugural tankard in the first post, then onto the old familiar, the famous cock, the cross hands, the good companions, the trusty servant, the two-headed dog, the mermaid, the beehive, the king's head, and the hole in the wall for a measure of the same, all before the last bittersweet pint in that most fateful terminus, the world's end. Leave a light on, good lady, for though we may return with a twinkle in our eyes, we will in truth be blind. Drunk. I'm Connor Eyzaguirre.
And I'm Adam Johnson.
And this is Filmgazm. Oh, that was hard to do without breathing a couple times. Goddamn. Welcome to the Filmgazm podcast. Today, we're continuing our best of the 2010s miniseries with my number 9, the 2013 sci-fi comedy, The World's End, the epic conclusion to Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's Cornetto trilogy. It's a thematic trilogy, so it does not violate our no franchises rule. Austin will not be joining us today as he is feeling a bit under the weather, but Adam and I are here to discuss this hilarious and heartfelt comedy. So what is your history with The World's End? Had you seen this before we added it to the program here?
I had a couple of times. Yeah, I saw it in theaters when it first came out. I was living in College Station at the time. I saw it using I guess it's not a fake ID. It was a student ID of someone else from A&M that looked nothing like me, but I had this like little trick that I would pull, like show that it was like I had an A&M ID. Because if you have an A&M ID in College Station, you get cheap stuff all over the place. So these tickets were $4. The movie tickets at this place were $4. So I would just see everything there. But this is one I was like actually excited for. Saw it in theaters, and I've seen it once since then, and obviously I watched it in the last couple of days to kind of prepare for this. So yeah, no, I mean it's great. I loved it when I first saw it, and when I first saw The World's End, I had not seen the other two. So then I went back and watched those. I've only seen those other two, Hot Fuzz, and why am I blanking?
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead. Yeah. It's like Shaun of the Dead. There it is. It was like somewhere in that mind. I've only seen those once since this movie came out. But yeah, no, I love this movie, and I think we're gonna get into the kind of the British humor side of it. And I love the cast. I mean, there's so many guys. There's a lot of connections to like the UK Office, which we'll have to talk about later. But yeah, no, it's really good. So that was my history. What was the first time you saw it? Did you see it in theaters?
Oh yeah, I was counting down the days to this one. I've been a fan of the Cornettos since I saw Shaun of the Dead when I was like 12, 13 years old. My mom brought it home one day, just randomly, like something she bought at like a Blockbuster sale or something. And we started watching it, and I was like, this is hilarious. Like, I love the humor. I love the, like, how insanely over the top gory it is. I hadn't seen any like Romero zombie films at that time, so I didn't have any frame of reference, but I was just enjoying it. And then Hot Fuzz came out. I was like, this is amazing. And then at that point, I was like, when's the third one? And then The World's End came out, and I went opening night, and I was so excited, and it did not disappoint. And it's become kind of a staple in my family. We all kind of love these movies, and we put them on for kicks just whenever we're feeling like, let's laugh at something, and we throw on a Cornetto. So there's no way I was going to make a top 10 list without including The World's End. It's just such a delightful movie, and also has a good lesson about like living life on your own terms, but like carefully, like, don't get trapped in one memory. I have a certain family member who reminds me so much of Gary King that it's scary. And he has no fucking clue. He does not see it.
Have I met this family member?
I don't. I know Austin has. I don't think you have.
Okay.
I'll tell you who it is when we're done recording. I don't want.
Okay.
I don't want.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah. So there's a lot of personal like investment for me in this movie.
Nice. No, that's cool. And I it's one of those that like I think if you would have had, like you said, you were counting down the days, like had I seen the other two first, I think I would have had even more of an anticipation. I think it would have even like a higher kind of place in my mind than it does, because it's like you always hope these movies, when there is like some sort of kind of thematic trilogy like this, like, oh, I hope they build on it, I hope it's just as good, I hope it, you know what I mean, and then when it actually is, like it almost like vaulted even more. It's like, oh man, it actually came through, like it actually like lived up to the hype, which is awesome. So I kind of wish I would have had that prior history with this trilogy going into The World's End. But no, it's such a fun movie, and I'm obviously a huge fan of UK humor. So yeah, so we'll I'm sure we'll dig into that here pretty soon.
Yeah, sooner than you think. That's actually my question to start us out here is what do you think of British comedy and what are some British comedies that you enjoy? Like let's get into that right now.
I love it. So I wouldn't call myself an Anglophile, but I do like so I'm a massive soccer fan. Follow the Premier League religiously. And I think through that I've like kind of like just reading about different things and like I read these magazines that are from like the 2000s and all these books from different eras, like trying to learn because when I kind of get into something I really try to dig really deep and like learn about the history and all that stuff. I think you're very similar.
Yeah.
Obviously Austin is too. So I I read all these books and all this stuff, and they make these references to like different shows and movies and things like that. That I'm like, I didn't really watch those growing up. I wasn't checking for what was coming out of the BBC, when I was 10, or 12 or 15 even. So once I got into soccer, I kind of like delved into like kind of the English culture in general. I've been over there a few times. Just recently, I was there in March in London, Liverpool, and Manchester. And it's like a culture that I'm completely fascinated by. I'm terrified of in some regards, and then I also find just like very very funny. It's a more literate culture, I think, than we have here for sure.
Yeah.
There's kind of like a sharper humor that it's definitely meaner. I think that's definitely true, which comes with there's some pros and cons to that. But like very specific movies, I'd have to like I really think should have thought about this more. But the UK Office was the first thing I saw that I was like, oh, this is different, and I like it. Like I actually like this a lot. I understand why people don't like if you like the sweetness of like the American Office, you're not going to like the David Brents of the world or the Finchies of the world in the UK Office. But I love it. So I think both can exist, and I actually really love both of them. I don't really have like a one that I prefer. I really like both of them. So what about you? What are some movies you really like?
Well, like the Cornettos really are kind of like what helped shape my love of British humor. My family spent a lot of time in Germany watching, BBC, and it helped shape a bit of a sarcastic lean in terms of our humor, and I that passed on to me. So I've always appreciated sarcasm, quick-witted, more literate humor, like you said. Um, a big one for me is Blackadder. I fucking love Blackadder. That is one of the smartest comedies I've ever seen. Have you ever seen Blackadder?
I've not. No.
It's Rowan Atkinson who played Mr. Bean. This is
Mhm.
like his other famous British role. It's every season is a different time period, and he plays Edmund Blackadder or a descendant of Edmund Blackadder, who's this like servant to an idiot king or general who knows better. He wants to be like powerful, but everyone's an idiot and in his way. And he's constantly like picking apart the situation and mocking people, and they just don't realize that he's mocking them because they're stupid. It's so funny. It's really good. It lasted for 4 seasons, and then it got a Christmas special in like the 90s, and it's gold. Uh,
4 seasons, like 3 episodes per season. Is that like
there were
is that so that's
about 6 episodes a season,
okay?
so there's
Yeah,
not a lot of
yeah. That's something
Blackadder, but you know,
yeah, which I love that. I love that. It's like tell your story, get out. You know what I mean? Like I love that about UK TV in general. It's just like, hey, here's the story. All right, let's move on. I mean, like Fleabag is one of my favorite shows ever, and it's like whether like 12 episodes of that. It's like UK Office. I think there's only what 14 episodes. I think something like that.
yeah,
It's around that. It's
about
very very small, sample size, but I mean, it's so good. So yeah, there and part of that is just like their broadcasting system. It's not broadcast like it's a subsidized, the BBC is a subsidized thing. Like they don't need to like make this for ads, so therefore it's a totally different pay structure. Like they're not like dragging things out for 10 seasons, just like everybody can have make a decent buck off of it. So I do like that. I guess as you were kind of talking, I was like some of the Alan Partridge stuff. I definitely seen some of that, but I haven't gone backwards like the Monty Python. I mean, I've seen like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but I haven't gone back and watched like all of those or like Faulty Towers. Like I've never watched that show, but I know that's like a huge one.
yeah.
So that there's a lot that like still is there to be discovered, but the general vibe of British humor I do really enjoy.
Yeah, me for sure. Faulty Towers is hysterical. I recommend that for sure. I love Extras. Did you ever see Extras?
No.
That was Ricky Gervais' like follow-up series to The Office, where he played a guy who's getting like work as an extra on various movie sets, and he keeps like being an asshole, and it's got like celebrity cameos every time, and like who's he gonna offend this time by his shenanigans? It only lasted like 2 seasons of like 4 episodes a pop, but it was so funny. They had Samuel L. Jackson, they had Ben Stiller, like they got really big names on that show. Uh
Did you ever see An Idiot Abroad?
I've heard of it. Carl Pilkington, right?
Yes, yes, very funny. Yeah, so that's also Ricky Gervais, and Stephen Merchant, the same guy, yeah, the guys who created The Office together. Yeah, and then they hire this guy, yeah, Carl Pilkington. They just like send him all these like ridiculous tasks like all around the world. He's just very like kind of closed off, like why would anyone need to travel, type guy. This is like kind of just classic, I think he's Manchester, yeah, Mancunian that just like doesn't want to do anything. And they just put him in these ridiculous, situations. And he does learn a bit about himself, but like they clearly, I mean, yeah, it's a culture that definitely like has no problem kind of making fun of its own, and like that's a big thing, like the kind of like the UK, like the soccer scene too. It's like they almost relish like the opponents making a mistake more than they like their own team scoring. It's like they love that. That's like just like a thing in their culture that they just love. It's like that kind of like haha, like like you failed, culture, which can be like grating at times, but also like can be very funny. So I think that's maybe why I'm drawn to it.
Yeah, it's kind of that like, hilarious when it's not you kind of comedy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Uh yeah, and I think the Cornettos are probably, these three films have become very popular stateside, uh, which a lot of British stuff has, but I don't think like not hugely popular. A lot of it's just remade in American style and it's never as good. Like they tried to do Faulty Towers like three times in the States and it bombed every single time because they couldn't get the humor right. Like he was either too mean or not mean enough. You got to find that sweet spot. And the Brits know how to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, they also, I'm a huge Succession fan, and that is like a kind of a dark comedy in a way, but and that's also written by an Englishman. So they've done a good job, and like Veep was written by an Englishman. So it's like they know how to kind of like change like tweak it a little bit to make it more for kind of an American audience and make it maybe a tad broader, but still have that bite and that wit that comes from kind of the UK TV scene. So I do really enjoy that.
I've always wanted to see this show that Simon Pegg got started on. It was called Spaced.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
heard that's pretty good. Yeah, I saw people mentioning that on like Letterboxd reviews, like, "Oh, this is the first time I heard of him," and like now I've seen this movie. So no,
yeah, that's where they kind of all started. And again, it was only like 6 episodes, like super quick show, but definitely something I would like to see if I could find it. So cool, yeah. British comedy's hilarious, obviously. And Edgar Wright is the second filmmaker we've like, or the first filmmaker we've talked about twice on this little mini series. Not the last. We will be covering Quentin Tarantino twice at some point. But it's always nice when a director can, capture our love twice in one decade for a list like this.
yeah, and I think we all follow the rule of you could only have one movie by a director, right? Is that true?
No.
Oh, you did not. Okay. I did. That was a rule that I gave myself that I think there's only really a couple people that were in danger of actually like me breaking that rule. But yeah, I gave myself that rule. So okay, that's right. Yeah. I'm not gonna say yeah. Oh, it's not like a spoiler. You keep calling it a mini series, but it's very much a long series that we're doing here. It's like 30, it's like what is it, 25 movies in the end, 26 movies,
That's
something
true.
like that.
It's an American season for sure. Uh,
Yes.
but I don't know. I just like the whole podcast as a whole is like its own thing, and then we're doing this inside the podcast. So it's like
Sure.
mini
Sure.
series is the best way I can explain it.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Um, all right, so let's talk about where the World's End came from. This is the third entry in the Cornetto trilogy behind 2004's Shaun of the Dead and 2007's Hot Fuzz. The film began with the title Crawl and was about a group of teenagers on a pub crawl. Edgar Wright wrote it when he was 21, later decided to change the characters to adults trying to recapture the feelings of returning to their hometown as strangers who have grown out of it, which I think was a great artistic choice, more relatable than a bunch of teens just getting fucked up. Like we've all seen that, but a bunch of older guys who have moved past it, returning to their town and just not being all that into it. Like I can get behind that. I've done that. Very creative.
Sorry. Yeah, my bad. I was on mute for a second. No, I completely agree. I know people who are very close to a Gary King, and I think there's people who, given what I do for a living, and like I'm still around. Like just tonight, I just came from I'm a basketball coach, and I coach kids of all different ages, and have older kids, younger kids, whatever, college, high school, whatever. Mostly high school. And I just came from a graduation party for a bunch of them for high schoolers, and like at the party, I feel equally comfortable talking to like the parents and the kids and like the alumni and and so I'm sure there's people who look at me and like they see me sitting at a table with like some kids for a minute and like, oh, yep, there's the guy that like never like grew up, like he still just like talks to kids and like whatever. And I just don't view it that way, but I'm sure there's people who like think that I have some of like this, and it's like, oh, like remember the time. But I think where I maybe don't is like I don't like I think there's a line in Sopranos, like every bad conversation starts with like remember the time, like it's like when you don't actually have anything to like talk about. It's like you just have to like reminisce on this thing. And that's obviously the Simon Pegg character in this. He has like that like to the nth degree of just like that's all he has, right? He has nothing else really but that. Just like, reminisce on this time that he like hoped for everything. And there's this back and forth battle of like, right, like you and I we're both into like things that can be deemed as like relatively childish, like but like I just don't that's okay. It's like I know I like can strike that balance and like do like real work and like also like live in the present without but also like remember the past, like have fun with it and like talk about it and like use my experiences to, like help somebody younger than me. Yeah, I think basically what I'm trying to get at is like we're all not that far from the Simon Pegg character. You know what I mean? If we're not careful, I think that's one of the big lessons of the movie.
Well, the trick is to be aware of it. Like you have to be
Yes.
aware that you didn't peak in high school. And Gary King does
Yes.
not realize that he peaked in high school. He's still in high school.
Yes.
And everyone else is like, they all hate him. Like it's very clear that all of his friends despise him, but they're there to see each other and try to get something out of this. And yeah, like I, there's times when I'm like, I think about like, was high school, you know, were are the happiest days of my life behind me? We think about that sometimes. Everyone does, I'm sure. And you just got to find something to live for now. And for me, that is the like right now, it's this podcast. this is like the most fun I have in my life doing this.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, we all need to find that thing. I mean, I thankfully am like like my work life is like where I find like a ton of joy and where I find like a lot of purpose, and that's awesome. I mean, like, and this like tonight, like this thing I just went to is like part of it, right? It's like that connecting again with like both like the people I work with and the parents of the kids that I work with, and all of it is a part of it, so that like there's more trust like when we're on the court or when like, I really need them to do something, kind of for the team. It's like all of this is kind of like a piece of each other, and I have great joy from that. And so like it's like yeah, it definitely is like one of those things that kind of helps drive me or whatever. I mean, it's yeah, it's a huge deal. I feel bad for people who don't have a thing, right? You and Austin are such kindred spirits, like the movie thing. Obviously, Austin and I, have the sports connection as well. And I have some friends that are just like, I just like don't have a thing that I'm into. And it's like I really like that bums me out. Like I want people to have that same joy and passion that I have for something, for whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what it is. And when I find somebody that has the same passion, even if it has nothing to do with what I'm into, I find that really interesting. I love talking about it with them, because it's like, oh, we have that same thing. The thing is different, but we have that same kind of like want to do this thing or whatever, get up and kind of drive you each day. It's cool. It's like the whole point of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, passion helps life, it fosters life. And Gary's passion is, booze. That's all he's got is the golden mile. And yeah, we'll get into it. But yeah, it's hard to just not immediately analyze this guy.
No, I know. It really is hard. He's yeah, I mean I'm not gonna say there's a lot of depth to him, but there's a lot of different ways you can talk about him.
Yeah, there's so many ways to analyze this guy. Like, is what condition does he have? He has one, but what is it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So Simon Pegg described his input to the writing process in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, and I thought this was really fascinating. He said, "People think we choose the genre first every time, and it's not true. We find the stories first. The notion of alienation from your hometown, taken to its literal conclusion, was how we got to science fiction." And you can feel that in all three movies, where there's a relatable situation that then gets completely, turned into something crazy. In Shaun of the Dead, it's a breakup that turns into a zombie movie. In Hot Fuzz, it's, relocation of a new job turns into a, action movie. And in this one, it's a midlife crisis turning into the end of the world. Very cool that they do that first. They look for the relatable side of it and then make it crazy. That's smart.
No, it is, and it makes the characters like just so much more human because it's like, oh, okay, like I can actually understand like what like makes them tick or whatever, and not just like, hey, this is a zombie movie, like zombies from minute one, like that does matter, but it also doesn't linger on that stuff for so long that you're like, okay, like we get it, like where are the zombies? It's like they kind of find the timing with each one, and I know you're probably gonna want to talk about the other two, like I like it's weird. I was looking back at my letterbox. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen these two, and I like rated them, and I remember liking them. It's like I actually can't like recall like very specific scenes. Like I really need to see them again, which is why I'm glad we're not doing the full trilogy today. We're just kind of focusing on this one because I hate going into something like I need to like have seen it more recently to like really be able to talk about it and dissect it. Because yeah, I'm not one of those people who like after the first time I see something, I just remember everything about it. Like I need to see it a second and third time before I can like remember lines and everything, like very specific moments. I just remember like, oh, I saw it and I did like it. It's like it's just one of those things. So I'm glad we're saving the trilogy talk. And the trilogy talk probably deserves its own thing. So I'm glad we're saving that.
Yeah, for sure. I tailored this specifically to avoid talking about Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz as much as possible because they do deserve their own time in the spotlight, and that will happen.
Good, good.
Uh, each of the names of the 12 pubs featured foreshadows events that take place in that pub. I love that. That is one of the smartest thing about the script. The first pub they visit is the First Post, which is, the first pub. The interior of the Old Familiar is exactly the same as the First Post. The Gary King is finally recognized as the banned teenager in The Famous Cock. They work together during a fight at the Cross Hands. All the guys are acting happy, they're acting like they're happy, except for Gary, which is reflected in the sign for the Good Companions. The sign is 4 sad masks and 1 happy one. They meet the drug dealer and the trusty servant. The bitchy twins, as they're called, are met in the 2-headed dog. In the Mermaid, they're tempted by hot teenage girls. In the Beehive, they all fight off swarms of enemies. At the King's Head, Gary King makes a last stand. And then in the Hole in the Wall, they drive a car through the wall, make a hole in the wall, and then at the world's end, the world ends. That is beautiful and just so neat that they did that for all the pubs. And it echoes the super creative cyclical writing style that Wright and Pegg bring to all 3 of these movies, where constant lines and moments are recalled throughout the film in different contexts. And I wish I had 1 iota of that talent. That is so cool and so neat.
No, it's so smart, and it's also so rewarding. Like when you have like those like kind of like layered bits like that, and like the writing is like that. I mean, like Arrested Development is like this too, right? It rewards multiple viewings of like, okay, I didn't catch that the first time, but like now that I know what's coming here, okay, now I can like kind of see these things kind of play out. That's just like really sharp layered writing. It's really really impressive.
One thing I noticed, I've seen this movie 100 times. I love this movie. I noticed something in this viewing I hadn't seen before. Early on, when Gary's trying to recruit Andy for the pub crawl, he mentions, I saw the boys the other day, and he calls Peter the Petatron. And then later on, Peter ends up as a robot.
I did. Yeah, I didn't. I would never caught that. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Oh yeah, it's every time I watch this, I get like there's a new line I see, and it's like, oh wait a minute, brilliant.
That's awesome.
The World's End has an IMDb score of 6.9, Rotten Tomatoes score of 89%. Critics' consensus reads, madcap and heartfelt, Edgar Wright's apocalypse comedy The World's End benefits from the typically hilarious Simon Pegg and Nick Frost with a plethora of supporting players. And I agree. The cast is absolutely perfect here. I love that in this one, as opposed to the other two, Simon Pegg is the crazy one and Nick Frost is the straight man trying to calm his crazy ass friend he kind of despises. Yeah.
No, the cast is phenomenal. Like and kind of like a who's who of like kind of the British like comedy scene. And I love that like Rosamund Pike is in this obviously for quite a bit, and like she goes on just like a year later to star in Gone Girl and be like this absolute like just like perfect performance in that movie. Yeah, which like makes it like even more enjoyable to watch her in this.
Yeah, she's got insane range, and I'm glad that she finally got recognized for that with Gone Girl.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I love Bill Nighy as the voice of the network. Like that's just perfect. He also makes an appearance in all 3 Cornettos as a figure of authority. And just Gary King drunkenly arguing with a robot overlord will never get old. Paddy Considine is great in this. He usually plays a lot like very dark, kind of sadistic characters. So seeing him kind of play a normal dude was cool. Martin Freeman plays an exasperated real estate agent perfectly, and Eddie Marsan is always just great as the little guy who's gonna get into some shit. I see him in that guy does so much. He gets so much work. I see him in like 3 films a year.
Yeah, yeah.
So good.
He's in this movie. It's one of my like kind of favorite, like really small. It's this movie called 66. And it's set in London in 1966. And it's about a kid who has his bar mitzvah. He's like really into like his bar mitzvah. He like can't wait for that day and all that stuff. And then it falls on the World Cup final, which is the only World Cup final England has ever played in. And his birthday falls on the day of the World Cup final, and so nobody wants to go to his bar mitzvah. So he's like devastated. But Eddie Marsan plays his dad, and is just so good in this movie. So Helena Bonham Carter plays the mom, and she's great too. It's really good. It's really like well worth the watch. But yeah, and then there's like this really touching scene with them, like closer to the end of the movie. But yeah, he's so good in that movie. That's like the first thing I think of when I think of him. But yeah, you're right. He is like prolific. And honestly, so is Martin Freeman. I mean, obviously he was in the UK office. We've already talked about that, a couple times. As the like Jim-like character in the UK version. He's also in the first season of Fargo, and I thought he was absolutely excellent in that. So yeah, he's Martin Freeman's like kind of become one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's awesome. I got to add that 66 movie to my list.
Yes, definitely.
I'll check
definitely
that out. For me, because of his like how crazy the fucking character is, whenever I think of Eddie Marsan, I go straight to The Gentleman.
Yeah.
And his role is Big Dave, who gets quite the comeuppance in that movie.
Yeah. The Gentleman's so good. I love The Gentleman.
That is a fantastic movie. I
kind of got lost to COVID. It was like came out like right before. It just kind of one of those like kind of fell in that little nether region.
Yeah. I grabbed it immediately. I was in as soon as like I saw it in theaters and thought this is fucking fantastic, and it's become one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. Have we mentioned David Bradley and Pierce Brosnan yet? They're just great.
Yeah, I love Pierce Brosnan. Why not? Yeah, get another Bond in your Cornetto. That's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, just as this kind of, old teacher they all kind of liked because he was, kind of wanted to help them. And now he's helping the robots try to capture him. Yeah, I love when they laugh at like, he's like, please call me Guy. And they try to, and they crack up.
Yeah.
Yeah. David Bradley as the, wacky town kook who's completely correct. I always love that.
Yep.
Great people in this. I think we covered all the major players, I think. Wonderful cast. The film is a modest commercial hit, grossing only $46 million on a budget of $20 million. Decent for a comedy in 2013. Like the other two Cornetto films, it has since become a cult classic, which is great. All three of these films are pretty beloved by fans of the Cornetto trilogy. There's not really a weak spot, which is cool.
Yeah, it needs to get on a streaming service. Like all three of them need to get on a streaming service and like kind of be featured, because I do think they would do really well as like obviously as a trio. I think it would have like this kind of like even second or third wave of like popularity. Because it is one that's like if you missed it, you probably would see it. Maybe you didn't see it in theaters, never saw it the first time it came out, but like if you saw it now, you'd be like, oh man, that was pretty good. Like maybe you hadn't seen the other two, so you want to go back and watch those. And I wish they were like all in one place for people to kind of like grab onto, because I do think there's like a long shelf life to these movies.
Yeah, that's why I love Vudu, because I get to build my own streaming service and I never have to worry about that.
Yeah, of course.
I guess with that, let's take a quick break and then we'll get to the awards.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've got the Quentin Tarantino Award for the best line of the film, the Thomas Newman Award for the best music moment, the Philip Seymour Hoffman Award for the best performance, and the John Carpenter Award for the best scene. So let's start with the Tarantino Award, best line. What do you got?
So I have an exchange between Gary King and let me actually pull it up because I want to make sure I get it right. And Peter Page, which is when they're first kind of getting back together, and he's and Gary is trying to kind of like ask them about like their lives, but you can tell he like doesn't care at all about like what they actually have to say. So Gary says, "How is Peter Vanessa? No, your wife Vanessa. Yeah, how is she? She's good. Have you had sex yet? We have 2 children. Ooh, twice. Get you, fuck machine." That's such a good line. That little exchange was that one, like I was just cracking up at that. So that's perfect. Like just like those two guys playing off each other was just like perfect. So that was my favorite.
That's a good one. I also really like the similar exchange with Steven when he's like, "How's your wife?" And he's like, "We got divorced." He's like, "Yeah, I know. It just wondered how she was."
Yeah.
He'll
Yeah.
never admit he was wrong about anything.
Yeah. Clearly doesn't give a shit. Yeah. Yeah. Just no, it's so good.
Good pick. Yeah, great. I love when his dad comes over and he's like, "What the hell is he doing here?" Like he
Yeah.
still hates Gary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy. Um, Mine comes from Andy right after he gets just completely shit faced and is now on board with everything. And they meet up with Sam in one of the pubs, and Sam tries to ask, like, Andy, what's happening? And Andy, completely fucked up, goes, Gary thinks we should keep up with the crawl because they don't know what they're doing, but they don't know that we know what they're doing. And basically, no one else has a better idea. So fuck it. And then he crashes through the window.
That little stretch where they're like trying to figure out like yeah, who is who, like how do we like go about this is like that's like my favorite part of the movie. That kind of middle portion of like, clearly something's wrong. How exactly we do this? We're kind of in it with them. Like I love that bit.
I love that Gary actually convinces them in the midst of a like robot uprising to continue with the pub crawl.
They're just like, whatever. What else we're gonna do? Yeah, that's no, it's so good.
I love at the end when they're like, try like they're losing people. And Gary's like, we're almost there. And he's like, almost where? And Andy's like, fuck, we're still on the crawl. Oh, there's so many fantastic lines in this. I almost had at the end when Gary's confronting the network and he just goes, oh, fuck off, you big lamp.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. That was such a good line.
oh boy. Yeah, there's this is a great script. So many funny moments. I would love to know how much of it was like made up on the spot, how much was improvised. Because his Wright and Pegg script seemed pretty well oiled, ready, like really like a perfect machine. So I wonder how much improvisation is included.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I never watched like you've seen this movie more than I have. Like any sort of like director's commentary or like or even Edgar Wright like specifically talking about this. I've listened to interviews with him talking about like his career and things like that or other movies, but not this specifically because I bet there is room for that. Like I think he's probably he's not like an outline guy where it's like, oh, here's the outline, like I'll just riff. Like he probably does have like, hey, no, like I have specific stuff. But with Pegg specifically, he probably gives like a little bit more latitude to like kind of explore a little bit.
You're probably right. I know that there was quite a bit of improvisation in Shaun of the Dead between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg's characters. But then Hot Fuzz is like so finely tuned that I just don't see the opportunity for it. And then The World's End's kind of similar. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll look into that.
Yeah.
The Thomas Newman Award, the best music moment. I had the I'm Free by the Soup Dragons when Gary shows up with the Beast, the car that Peter sold him in 1990 that he still has, even though he's replaced the doors, the engine, like everything. It's the same car. Love that. They're like, oh, I remember this. And it's like, that was on that tape I made you. And Gary's like, yeah, this is the tape. And Steven's like, where'd you find it? He's like, it was in the tape player. And they all look at each other like, oh, that's weird.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's such a sign of like how little that character has evolved. It's like, oh no, it's like literally the exact same tape from 23 years earlier. They're like, it's still in the tape player. I listen to it all the time. Like, I can't get past like this like point in time. Like my youngest brother Isaiah will make fun of me sometimes. He's like, you only listen to music that's like from before like 1995, something like that. It's like that's not like obviously completely true, but I do kind of like it's not even things from my youth. It's just like I just kind of like connect more to music that was from I don't know, a different time. Like, I don't know. I sound like such a like so lame, which is dumb because I don't like just listen to that. But yeah, he does kind of like make fun of me with that. So I relate to that bit just like a little bit. But yeah, the fact that he's like, I also really like a wide variety of music, and he clearly is like, nope, I'm just gonna listen to that thing, the same tape we listened to when we were on this pub crawl 33 years ago, because like I cannot get past that moment in my life. You know what I mean? Like it's such a sign of like where that character is. And actually, so there's so many good songs on this. So I'm gonna kind of piggyback on yours. I am gonna go with the same kind of moment, but it's like I like how they use that some of the lines from that song and that song in general, like throughout the movie to kind of show like I want to be free to do what I want, any old time. He kind of references it at different points. So I actually am going to pick the kind of same song, although there are a bunch of like really good songs on the soundtrack. It's a banger. It's a banger of a soundtrack. So, but I will go with that same one because I think there's an importance like as a through line throughout the movie.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few of those. Like the movie opens with a song I don't know the name of the song, but that song opens with a line from a Peter Fonda movie where he's, they're like, "What is it you want to do?" And he says, we want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to get loaded and we want to have a good time." And Gary, of course, uses that same thing to save the world.
Yeah.
Debatable.
Yeah, debatable for sure.
I love the use of the Doors whiskey bar when they're just kind of trying to nonchalantly walk through town, going from pub to pub. Every blank in town clearly knows what they're up to. They think they're being inconspicuous. It's just
Yeah, I mean, just quickly to go through, I've got the soundtrack up here. I mean, we've got Blur, Happy Mondays, Suede, Teenage Fan Club, Stone Roses, The Doors, like you mentioned, Definition of Sound, Kylie Minogue, Saint Etienne, Silver Bullet, House Martins. I mean, it's a really good kind of like 90s, like British band. It's great.
Yeah. My mom, who did go to high school in 1990, like loves this movie, especially the soundtrack, because like she was also into like 90s new wave bands like Gary, so she knows all these songs. Like she knows Sisters of Mercy and all that. Like she digs this movie.
That's awesome. I love that. I was born in 1980, so I yeah, there's a little connection there.
Nice. Philip Seymour Hoffman Award, best performance. Who'd you go with?
I went with Nick Frost. I think he's like kind of forever underrated. And like, I mean, he's perfect for these movies specifically. Obviously, he's got like such a great chemistry with Simon Pegg. I mean, it's just like it just jumps off the screen. And knows how to kind of deliver the dialogue of Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg so well. And he's like at times funny, he's at times touching, kind of whatever the moment needs, he can kind of rise up and do it. And he's just like perfectly cast for these movies specifically. So I think he's always underrated. So I went with Nick Frost.
Nice. Yeah, of the three Cornettos, yeah, this is yeah, it's probably my favorite Nick Frost performance because he gets to play the irritated, jilted friend who never got the apology he deserved, and he never lets Gary forget that, but Gary doesn't fucking care. Yeah, I think they have the best chemistry in this movie. I love the teetotaler speech where he like tries to, brag about drinking water. It's like, that takes balls. Yeah. Such a great moment for him.
Yeah. So as a fellow, like I don't not drink because of like a dark history of my own, but like because of some family stuff that I've like tried to avoid myself. I don't drink. I felt so like seen a little bit in that like because I've ordered water at bars before. I've gotten like Sprite at bars before where everybody else in the whole place is drinking. I'm just like, yeah, I'll take that. It's like, yeah, no, it does take some confidence to just be like, yeah, I don't care. Like everybody's gonna like laugh at me or be like, oh, this like loser's not even drinking. And I've even had people who like will almost get like mad at me, like not my friends, but like kind of people that were at the same function as me. It's like, why aren't you drinking? It's like, dude, I just don't drink. It's okay, like. And so no, I felt a little bit seen by that little speech that he gave. Obviously, he had a very different reason to not drink than I do, but still, I felt a little bit seen.
I'm exactly the same way. Yeah, I also do not drink due to some family stuff, and yeah, it's awesome to see us get kind of some representation of like
absolutely, yeah.
You can order water at a bar in front of a bunch of thirsty bastards who will rip you apart, and then that happens at the end of the movie where Gary and his blank friends order water at a bar and they start a battle. So great.
Love it.
A man of your legendary prowess drinking fucking rain.
That line is hilarious though. Rain. Yeah, he says it with such disdain. Like he just cannot believe that he would do that. What does he say? It's like
watching a lion eating some hummus.
Hummus, yeah, that's it. A lion with hummus. Yeah, that's perfect. That's such a good line.
Oh, great. That's great. I went Simon Pegg. So
okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Yeah, he's great.
He is giving like just a fantastic layered, kind of pained performance in this movie. We meet Gary at like a group therapy session. We don't exactly know what happened yet, but we know that Gary's in a rough spot to start with, and he just kind of puts on this facade through the whole movie that starts to slip the drunker he gets and the closer he gets to the world's end. And yeah, I really admire Pegg's ability to balance that, give us this crazy, hilarious, over the top character who also has some serious demons. So I appreciated him giving it his all in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really like deep performance. And yeah, you mentioned the movie starts with him in that like therapy scene, and he's telling the story of that night out, right? That he can't get past, you know what I mean? And he's viewing it as like, oh man, wasn't that great? Where everybody else in the room is like, dude, this is like pathetic, you know? Like that's he just has no clue. So I think that's yeah, he has a really tough role to play, and I think does it incredibly well.
Yeah. He still thinks he's the king of high school.
Yeah.
And I love that all of his friends are like, whenever he brings it up to them, they're like, really? You want to do that again?
Yeah.
Like, it's a bad memory for them. But for him, it's the greatest night of his life.
Yeah. And part of the reason it was the greatest night of his life is it's connected to hope, right? It's like the hope of we'll continue doing this, or there'll be more nights like this, or I'm only gonna get better from here, you know, type thing. And like he can't see the forest for the trees. It's like that's so it's not just about the night itself. It's like the hope he felt at the end of it. Like, oh man, how great is this? Like, I just want to keep doing this, you know. Which that in and of itself is not the problem. It's like what he was doing. So it's like the mindset of like, wow, how great was that? I'd love to keep doing that is great. If the thing you're continually doing is like something that helps someone or like it helps society in general, it's like if it's just like this drunken night out, it's like, well, yeah, you can't just keep doing that. You know, it's like that there's a point where yeah, and not even time to grow up, but just time to kind of like, yeah, change priorities a bit. It's like I forever want to feel like, young, or like, I have that same enthusiasm for things I had when I was 15 or 10 or 5, right? But there is a point where it's like you do have like extra responsibilities. Like you have to like tweak the way you do things for sure. And he just has never been able to do that until, the end of this movie, which is even that is debatable.
Well, we get that like that kind of realization at the end of his monologue at the beginning when he says, as I sat up there, blood on my knuckles, beer down my shirt, sick on my shoes, knowing in my heart life would never feel this good again. And you know what? It never did. But he says that with like a proud smile.
Right.
Like, that should be the most depressing thing you've ever said.
Yeah.
Like the greatest day of your life was in high school.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
And he's like, in his mind, I think he's like, at least I had that, and it's like, no, that's sad, it's like that's like not good, it's like that's not good that you only have that,
Yeah. In that scene though, during the flashback when they're on the hill, like just kind of resting after all that happened, you can see a shooting star hit the town, and that's the robots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
fucking
cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's good.
So neat. Yeah, so Pegg and Frost are kind of the stars of this thing, but Patty Considine, Martin Freeman, and Eddie Marsan are all also fantastic. The drunker they get, the better, like the funnier they get, especially Peter, who comes out of his shell and like when he's just like fuck yeah and stuff like that. I love when he attacks his bully with the tree branch. Like he goes out of frame, comes back with a giant tree branch, and just starts smacking the guy. Oh god.
That scene where he is like recalling like everything about like his bully though is like pretty like harrowing, like, and just saying like, the worst thing is like he didn't even recognize me. Like it's like I didn't even matter to him. That was like, wow, that's really sad. Like
yeah. And then Gary interrupts it with shots.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you doing? I thought that was obvious. Shots.
Yeah, forever the empath, Gary. Yeah. just incapable of like, feeling for anybody else, but no, crazy.
Oh, great. The John Carpenter Award, best scene of the movie. There's definitely contenders here.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I already mentioned that. I think that kind of like middle portion of the movie where it's like, in the first like 30 minutes are great. And I love the kind of buildup of like, like, are we seriously doing this? Like, I love the little meet up outside the train station. I love that a little bit with all the other friends. And he's late. Obviously, Gary's late. I like that part. But I like when we start to realize, like, okay, something is off here. Like, what exactly is it? And like, we're trying to figure it out. So I would say that initial bathroom fight is my favorite scene where like the kid's head gets like knocked off. And then Gary's the first one to realize, like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. Like, this guy's a robot. And then they all kind of like figure it out. And then the Patty Considine has like a line about like, well, like there's been 10 people coming in the bathroom. Like, we can't just leave, like, and just, like, everybody's like, where are these people going? So I like that, like, stretch right there, that bit, like, most takes place in that bathroom where they start to figure out, okay, something crazy is happening here. What exactly is it? We got to fight. They do fight. They kind of, form a little bit of a team. Like, it shows some kind of teamwork aspects in that scene. That's my favorite part of the movie.
That's a great shout. My favorite part of that bit is when they all run in to confront Gary about him lying about his mother's death. And they're all like, what is that? But Andy he's seeing red so hard, he does not see the headless robot right in front of him.
No, it's insane. Yeah, he's like, it doesn't even matter. He's like, that could be anything. That could just be anything. Like right there, he's like, all I want to do is get mad at my friend who like lied to me, you know. And who
Oh,
among us, who among us has not felt that at some point in our life?
oh God, yeah. I love we get the payoff on Oliver's constant WTF, and they're just like, "What the fuck does
Yeah.
WTF mean?" Like that. I love that we
He's like,
finally got
oh, yeah,
payoff on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I love the whole O man thing with like the 6 birthmark. That's fucking great.
Yeah.
Um, I ultimately went with the final bit where they get to the world's end and Andy finally confronts Gary about his problem. And Gary, drunk enough to be honest, finally is candid about what this is all about and why he's doing this. He, reveals that he's got, bandages from a suicide attempt and says, like envies Andy for his perfect life. And Andy's like, my life's not perfect. My marriage is on the rocks. Like, I'm not respected at my job. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, don't match yourself up to me. Like, my success is nothing. And I love when he tells Gary, like, why is this so important? And Gary breaks. He's like, it's all I've got. And
Yeah. Yeah.
he pleads with him, like, don't drink that last beer. If you don't drink, you win. And Gary's like, I don't want to be sober. Like, I don't need, like, this is what I need. And then, of course, they go down into the basement and confront the network. But I just love that moment of real drama where Gary is finally honest with Andy about this. He tells him, it's not my fault. You crashed that car. Like, just shit finally comes out. And it was just done so well between the two of them.
Yeah, and that's also a comment on like, well, particularly English men, but like men in general who like are not able to really express how they're feeling until confronted with like real like stakes and drama. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, how many like war movies where it's like, oh man, this person like finally opened up, but it's like only before this like battle, like we could all die. It's like how long do we need to go before like we can trust like either another man or a woman in our life to like really tell them like real stuff. I think that's a huge lesson, and I think that's a very like British thing of like kind of stiff upper lip, like don't explain what your problem is, like don't ever talk about anything emotional. That's just like a real kind of like uniquely English issue. I mean, it's uniquely probably male issue for the most part, but particularly kind of English men that just that's a real struggle for them to kind of like open up with anything. And so him kind of finally saying it's all I've got is like that's a real hurdle that he had to jump, right, to even like to even like admit that to his friend. Is a big deal. So yeah, it's a really well done scene, and both of them act. It's really well acted.
Yep. We see a few of those moments throughout the movie where these guys get drunk enough to really, have an honest moment. Like it takes, Steven, what, 8, 9 pints before he finally admits to Sam that he's in love with her.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's like it kills me to see you waste your affections on Gary fucking King.
Yeah.
Gary's like, hey, look, he's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there any other scenes that you might have you were thinking about going with?
Yeah, I mean the train one for sure when they're all getting back together, and then the beast kind of drives up and they're like, "Oh God, here we go." Like I really like that scene because like I've done that thing where I've reconnected with friends that maybe you haven't seen in a while or something like that, where it's like, oh man, like this is crazy, like we're all like back together after like all these years or things like that. That like that whole kind of like getting the band together thing is a fun scene in like any movie like this. I think this one is really well done. Of them like who made the biggest mistake here of like like deciding to come. I really like that bit. So that'd probably be like my second choice. And then yeah, the last scene. I mean, in the world's end actually, like with him like trying to get to the beer and then knocking it out. There's just constantly kind of comes up against these like these hurdles to actually get that last pint down. Is pretty good. And then also there's a quick close scene where I can't remember which pub it's at, but where they don't serve him. I guess it's the one that he's been like 86 or whatever, where he can't like, and he finds that he sees the 3 outside on the table, and like you see them all like are done by the time he walks away. I love that little bit there. That's a nice shot.
I love when he gets thrown out and they're all like, have 2 in the next one, and Andy's like, have them all in the next one for all I care. Like just they don't give a shit about any of this.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I really like the fight scene in the Beehive where like Pierce Brosnan's like, it's gonna be a peaceful transition, and then Andy realizes Oliver's been turned and breaks him open, and they're like, nope, we're not on board with this, and they all start fighting. That was done really well with Simon Pegg. He's trying to drink the beer, and they keep knocking it out of his hands.
That seems great. Yeah. So what did you think about the actual like execution. I'm like, okay, yeah. The execution of the, like, I guess, what do we want to call them? Robots, like alien robots, essentially. Like, what do you think of the execution of that? Like that they bleed blue and all that stuff, and like, that they can kind of like their heads can pop off and they can still be like, sentient and all that stuff, and the eyes and all that stuff. Like, what do you think about all that stuff?
That was very creative, very neat. I like how this movie really doesn't set you up for that. It just happens.
Right.
And now you're in this movie. That rarely works in film. Like you usually have to, prepare somebody for that kind of a shift. But it worked in all three films. There's a hard left turn all of a sudden, and now we're in a different genre. And I love when that happens. Um, I love that they kind of look like Legos. Like they have like the big circle pop like at the neck.
Yep.
And they needed to bleed blue because if you made them red, this would be you could not release this in the States.
Right.
I love I love the scene where the network like confronts, Gary confronts the network and you get to see what the whole plan was, like what this was all about. And like they just can't control humanity. Like they've had to replace everybody because humanity does not want to be part of this intergalactic like community. They don't care. You can't control people. I think it's a cool way to approach something like this. It's not just aliens, it's like an alien force trying to do good, but in the process, killing thousands of millions of people.
Yeah, it's like it's good in their mind, right? It's like, oh, but we're trying to like make this a perfect thing. It's like, well, no, it's like the beauty of it being human, like, is that it's imperfect. It's like it's the whole AI debate right now, right? It's like almost even more poignant, today than it was, 10 years ago. It's like I don't care that this is like more perfect. Like I don't actually want perfect. What makes it unique is the kind of imperfections and like the stuff that makes it human. It's like and there was this big debate. I was listening to this podcast recently about like music. Like, will there be a number one hit that's like written by AI? And it's like maybe that's true, but like I think people want authenticity. I actually don't think people like really want, like, if they know that it's written by AI, it's like, like, yeah, that's good. Like I can like in my mind I can say like that's catchy, or like I can I can hum that. But I'm gonna prefer the song written by Taylor Swift, written by Neil Young, written by you know what I mean, like whoever it was, because it's like that's what I don't know why I grabbed those two artists, but like that she's just like so big right now. That's like I think people are gonna prefer that, knowing, okay, even if like sonically it's not like a perfect sounding song like like this AI one, I still prefer it because I know it's written by a person.
Yeah, I don't think you can't take individuality out of art. You can't do it. Everyone, people who create art bring their own experiences to it, and that's what makes it art. Artistic expression is the human experience, and you take that out, like what do you have? Like you have data.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but man, I mean, people are gonna try. I mean, it's coming. I mean, like we're gonna get a Netflix show that's like completely written by AI. You know what I mean? Like it's like I guarantee you that's gonna happen. If not already, like given some of the quality of their movies, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like no, but the algorithm said like this is what it was. Like yeah, but like that's not everything. Like I also think sometimes what people think they want and what they actually want are different things. Like so
oh yeah,
I think that's gonna be a very different. It's gonna be really interesting to watch that kind of as we move forward. And yeah, you mentioned that they look like Legos. I was looking back at the quotes that I pulled up earlier, and there's a line where Gary says, "Get back in your rocket and fuck off back to Legoland, you cunts." I was like, that's funny that you said that they look like Legos, because yeah, he mentions Legoland at some point.
forgot about that one. That's I love it earlier in the movie when they get to the first post, like they're talking about, the like the starbucking, the
Yes.
initiative to rob pubs of any discernible character so that they're all similar and
Yep.
fake. And it's just great that that's what's being layered over this movie, is this idea that taking character out of something makes it better, which is complete bullshit. Like people, I don't know about everybody, but I seek out character. I look for
Right.
the scratches on the wall. I look for the graffiti, the doorknob that's not hanging quite correctly. Like it goes back to the individual in life and everyone putting something a little bit different, a little bit theirs into this overall experience of life. And if you take that out, life's boring and predictable.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's why, like, so you worked at 54th Street briefly, right?
No, I worked at Alma Draft House Stone
Oh,
Inn.
okay. So, but over that one that was over right by it with like
Oh
Grant
yeah.
and all,
Mhm.
all worked. Yeah. So yeah. So 54th Street is this interesting place. I really like their food, but like they have the walls decorated because like they want it to feel like lived in, right? Like feel like this place. And it's like, but use like whoever like put this like designed this just like went on eBay and just like bought a bunch of like shit that like was vaguely like like care like it's like I don't know. Is this like actually like full of character or is it just like you really want it to feel like it's full of character, and so you just like put all this like random shit like on the ceiling and like walls. It like kind of looks cool, but it's also like, but this is just it's just all random. It's like I don't know. Like I always like buck against that. Like and like I'll go to like a Canes in you know Georgia, and it all has like different like jerseys of like teams on the wall that are like unique to Georgia. And you go to one in like Bernie, right? Like out like where I work, and it's like it has like a Bernie High like jersey on the thing. It's like that's cool. Like it does, add like a little bit of character. But it's like it just feels like you're kind of trying a bit too hard. In these like brand new, like buildings to kind of like, oh, now like here's the character. It's like the stuff we put on the walls. It's like yeah, it goes back to that authenticity, right? Like we want authenticity more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't want fake authenticity because that's just pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a 54th Street in San Marcos that I go to, and they have the same, Blues Brothers statue thing, like on
Right.
the yeah, it's the same place. It's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
layout. I'm sure there's similar posters on the wall. Like there's no character there. You go there for conformity. You go there because the chicken tenders there are going to taste exactly the same as the chicken tenders at one in Georgia.
Yeah. 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 No, like, and they're good, right? Like, I actually like that
Yeah.
place. Like, I do
Yeah, I'll
like,
go there. Like, I got no problem with that, but I'm not gonna like take visitors from out of town to like come
right.
see my, the restaurant that represents my town,
This
54th
quirky,
Street.
this quirky like restaurant that has all this like crazy shit on the walls. It's like, yeah, that's not. I don't know. That's like not really the point. Yeah, I don't know. I think 54th Street actually started in St. Louis, if I remember correctly, which is up where I used to live. So I've been to one in St. Louis, and it's like, yep, it's the exact same. It's pretty much the same. Except instead of like a Spurs thing, there might be like a St. Louis Cardinals thing like somewhere on the wall. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's like what differentiates it. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. And we see that with all the blanks in this movie. They all, look and like they often talk pretty similar. Like there's no character left in these people
Right.
because they had to mulch the real ones.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
love the nonchalantly, like, yeah, they're all mulched and prepared for, and Gary's just like, mulched. Like, what?
Yeah, yeah, crazy.
God.
So how quickly, like, I mean, obviously, you've seen this a million times, like I've seen it a couple times before. So like, I know the Martin Freeman character is going to turn, but like when you saw the first time, were you like, how quickly were you like, oh, that he's off? I mean, clearly when they're in that like alleyway talking and he's like trying to convince them, like it's like, oh, okay, he's clearly turned at that point, but up until then, there's not like a ton of clues. Like maybe more because you've seen. Are there clues?
Um, well, if you look at like, if you hear the story of like, how it all went down that first night, you hear them like, pint six put O Man out of commission. So like when they get to the six pub, like that's when he gets taken.
Okay.
But the first watch, I didn't catch it until he tells Andy, like, it can't start without you.
Yeah.
That slip up, it's like, oh shit, he's a robot.
It's obvious. Yeah.
But yeah, it is, like I said, you get rewarded for repeated viewings.
For
Because
sure.
this point, when he comes out, he goes in the bathroom all like, like about to pass out, and he comes out all cheery and ready to go. It's like, okay, something happened in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fun. Great scenes, great picks, a lot of options. If I did this in like 3 months, I might have all different stuff. It's that kind of movie.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. I mean, it's you can grab different portions of it, I think any sort of like personality can also like the different parts of the movie. It's like if you're more of the kind of the like sci-fi. Also, like we haven't really talked about like the actual like fighting scenes. They're like really well choreographed, like really well done, like better than a lot of like action movies. Like yeah, I'm not like a massive like fight scene like action guy, but it's like they're fun to watch in this movie.
Well, I remember reading in my research, I forgot to include this, but the fight scenes were choreographed by a couple guys from Jackie Chan's team.
Okay, cool. That
So
makes sense.
they got some pros to
Yeah,
to
that
put
makes
this
sense.
together. Yeah, very cool. I love the action sequences. In the beehive when they're like, Andy slaps open Oliver's head and just like rips open his shirt. He's like, I fucking hate this town. And they all start fighting. It's a great sequence.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is.
I love that they're all named after like medieval knight related positions, Gary King, Oliver Chamberlain, Peter Page, Stephen
Andrew
Prince,
Knightley.
Andy
Yep.
Knightley.
Yep.
That's another just great all servants of the king.
Right. And they actually talk about Arthur at one point, right? Arthurian legend. Like at one point they actually talk about that. And he's like when he goes off to his castle and he's like, Camelot? It's like, yeah, he has that little line. Martin Freeman character. Camelot? Yeah. I
We
love
would have
that
had a
bit.
mead, the King Arthur of beers.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, with that, let's boo boo and go over to Letterboxd and see what's in the box.
What's in the fucking box? Give me the gun.
Well
The
played.
World's End rocking a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Pretty respectable.
Yep.
It's a 5 out of 5 for me. What do you got it as?
I have it as a 4. It's one of those like I wish there was something between a 4 and a 4.5 because I'm like I look at some of my other 4.5s like I probably don't like it quite as much as those, but I like it more than a lot of these 4s. It's like I wish I could find like a 4.2 or something. It's like yeah, it's like where it's kind of stuck in between that little thing. So yeah, no, I like it quite a bit. But yeah, I would say yeah, I'm a little stricter on 5 stars than you and Austin are, so I have less. So maybe my scale is not the best to go off of. But yeah, I have it as a 4.
I feel like I'm pretty restrictive with the 5 stars, way more than Austin is. I mean, he hands that shit out like it's candy.
Oh yeah, it's too many. Yeah, I've told him this. I mean, he knows this. I'm like, man, yeah, it's like you got to reserve that for like some of the very elite, or we need to maybe find a different scale because he's like, I said if the scale was 10 out of 10, would these all be 10s? And he was like, probably not. Probably not. Like if there was an extra like thing in between, maybe I would make some of these a 9. So I'm like, yeah, you got to think about that a little bit. But I don't know.
I just took the Filmgazm scale I've been using on my own site and just like condensed it into what Letterboxd uses. So like to me, like a 10 is a 5 out of 5, and a 9 is like a 4.5 out of 5. 8 is a 4 out of 5. Like I just moved it.
Yeah.
But everyone does it differently.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I've got 5 reviews here that I thought were just fantastic. So let's get into it. This first one's from Truman. The best use of a Doors song since Apocalypse Now? Yeah, I'll go with that. 4.5 stars.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, the end from Apocalypse Now. That's gonna be hard to beat for Doors in movies. This one's from Emily Rugburn. Is it ultimately being more of a comrade to someone to push them to be a better version of themselves, or is life such a challenging experience that it's better to just let people be who they are? Anyway, it's an unfairly maligned banger and continues to be my favorite of the trilogy. Nick Frost's reactions reliably make me laugh so hard every viewing, and I truly can't believe Edgar Wright turned out to be such a hack anytime he's not writing with Simon Pegg or adapting a comic he didn't write at all for the screen. 4.5 stars. I think that's a bit harsh.
It is, yeah. That is a hack. Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah, that's You can say like, oh, I don't like his other stuff. The stuff that he doesn't, he writes, I don't like it as much. But yeah, man, a hack. That's strong.
I think his funniest stuff is with Pegg, but I mean, like Baby Driver was still a good movie. Last Night in Soho wasn't bad. We all know my thoughts on Scott Pilgrim, but he does his thing. I like his thing.
So wait, read that first line again. Is it better to?
Is it ultimately being more of a comrade to someone to push them to be a better version of themselves, or is life such a challenging experience that it's better to just let people be who they are?
Man, that's tricky. I mean, with so many of these things, it sounds like you're sitting on the fence, but like it's probably a balance. I would lean towards it's better to like try to push somebody and like really help them. I mean, rather than just like sit by and kind of let them, I mean, yeah, they do whatever they want. It's like, well, obviously we can't go that far. It's like, because what they want to do is like totally self-destructive or destructive to others. Then it's like, well, you need to like change something. You're a stand-up guy, right?
Oh yeah.
Have you watched John Mulaney's new stand-up?
I did, yes.
Okay, so yeah, obviously he talks about the intervention a lot. That he always had a major drug problem, cocaine addiction, and I think Seth Meyers, Fred Armisen, they're all a part of the intervention to kind of help him out. And he said, they saved my life, and yeah, I mean, by that philosophy, like the second question she asked there, it's like, well, they would have just like let him keep doing that, and it's like, no, that would have ruined for sure his life, and obviously like some of the people that care about him the most around him. It's like, no, it's totally worth it for like them to actually like step in and be like, hey man, like there's a higher level you can get to, like let us help you there. And he did. What do you think of that stand up? I thought it was really good.
I loved it. I was hoping he was going to talk a little bit more about his his relationship situation that happened.
Yeah.
That, but that made him look like such a monster.
Yeah.
So I bet, you can't relate to the kids when you're doing that shit. So he had to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
But
No, I get that.
I did admire his decision to just be honest about his drug problems and admit his rep is fried. Like he's a different person now on the world stage because of what happened. And I was dying during the his Al Pacino impression, though. I'll give him that.
Yes, I love the interplay with the kid, the 11-year-old kid that was up in the balcony. That was so good. Where he was like, "You're about to hear a crazy story." Like he was like, "You yeah." He said he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen," and the world's brightest fifth grader or whatever. Like he said, oh, that was great too. But yeah, I actually really like John Mulaney. And I admire his honesty. I mean, he definitely, he clearly, obviously has all different sorts of issues, but we all do. So I appreciate that he channels it into something entertaining for us.
Yeah, I like celebrities who aren't afraid to be kind of vulnerable, who aren't who can show off their insecurities and remind us that we're all part of the same fucking race here. We're all just trying to get by. Some better than others.
Yeah, yeah, and some better at times than other times in their life. Yeah, at some point everybody's gonna need that person to kind of come along and be like, hey man, there's more here. Pick it up a little bit. I admire that. So. I'm sure that intervention was fascinating because he's like, it was star-studded. He's like, he makes a comment about it. He's like, Fred Armisen was being serious. Like, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I would love to know the rest of the people who were there, but I'm sure there was some confidentiality agreements talked about.
For sure.
Crazy. But yeah, it's hard to know when someone needs a push. Because you push too hard and you run the risk of alienating that person or causing a rift. Like I've got family who are making some terrible decisions in their life right now. And I have thought about saying something, but I keep thinking if I say something, is it going to ruin my relationship with this person?
Yes. And that's obviously a valid thing to consider. And I also think both when to push and then how hard to push too, right? It's they may what seemed to you be this really big problem. It may just be a momentary time where they need to kind of figure something out. I've got younger brothers and people in my life that there's sometimes oh man, this to me seems like this grave thing that they're struggling with, but to them it's no, it's just this little period. I had to kind of wade through myself and now I'm good. But had it gotten to a certain point, it's that's really hard. It's really hard to find that balance, really know exactly when is the right time to kind of step in and say something. I do believe there is a time, right? We should not always just step by and be oh well, he's got to learn, he'll figure it out on his own. No, that's what we're here for, right? We all need friends at some point in our life to kind of tell us hey, have you thought about this, or maybe look at this aspect of this, or think about it from this perspective, or hey, stop, what you're doing is destructive. So I think that's tough, and those are big questions.
Yeah, I agree. I had a recent. I'll be a little candid here, not too candid because I don't want to speak too much on this other person. I don't know what their thoughts are on this, but I had a moment a few months ago where I had somebody call a good friend call me on some behavior that was making them fairly uncomfortable. They wanted to know some stuff. We talked it through and it pretty much saved our friendship. And I felt, first off, pretty ashamed of something I didn't even realize I was doing. And I think I'm all the better for it. And I'm very glad they came to me about this. So thank you. You know who you are if you're listening to this. And I'm sorry. And I'm glad we worked that out. So yeah, I've been on the receiving end of a push too.
Oh no, I have too. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And in the moment, there's times where it's man, shut up. I'm good. I don't need, but you step back and oh no, that was necessary. I'm glad that person did that. It tells me how much they care. I'm glad I have people in my life that care,
yeah, exactly. It's nice to know that people give a shit about you once in a while.
Yes, for sure. We all need that.
But Emily, I do think you are a little tough on Edgar Wright, but I do like the idea you brought up. Thank you.
Yeah.
This next one's from Cursed Tales. If you don't like this movie, then you can get in your rocket and fuck off back to Legoland. 5 stars.
There you go. That's the line I mentioned earlier. Yes, that's great. I like that. Yeah, there were a lot of 5 stars. I think a lot of Edgar Wright's movies. It's man, if you love them, you really love them. Like and if you don't, you don't. So there's not a lot of just like average, like, oh, it was fine. It's like this is a genius, like, yeah, like what a perfect movie, or it was like, oh, I hated this, like it was so dumb. Yeah, I read a bunch of Letterboxd stuff today, and I thought they're all pretty fascinating.
I don't. I guess he's kind of an acquired taste. He's got very much a vibe to his work that you can either get on board with or not get on board with.
Yeah.
And I pretty much got on board with everything I've seen. I mean, even Scott Pilgrim, I didn't hate. I just, it's a little too weird for me, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you if you can't really like like suspend your belief on some stuff, like I think you're going to struggle with some of those. Like if you need it to be kind of like play by the rules, like pretty straightforward, like this is this is the story, or this is really realistic. Like, yeah, I just don't think you're going to like his movies, really at all. I guess Baby Driver is the most like kind of like just like normal, like that could just like happen to someone like in real life, but even that has like these like stylized like bits in it. But it's at least like a grounded, like, just kind of like human story. I mean, like Last Night in Soho has like tons of like dream sequences and things like that. It's like these kind of like outlandish, things. And then obviously these movies, like the Cornetto trilogy has like tons of, zombies and robots and everything like that. So and then Scott Pilgrim is like super stylized. So I don't like, yeah, it's probably Baby Driver is probably his most grounded, like human movie. So if you're not like into that type of stuff, like I can see why you would buck against his style a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Just out of curiosity, real quick, have you ever seen Paul?
Paul, no.
It's kind of the unofficial fourth Cornetto movie. It came out in 2011. It was Edgar Wright was not involved, but it was Simon Pegg and Nick Frost as these two nerds from England who come to America to go to Comic-Con and do like a UFO tour across the country in an RV, and they accidentally run into an alien who escaped Area 51 and decide to help him get home. And the alien is named Paul, and he's voiced by Seth Rogen, and it's really funny. It's not as good as the Cornettos, but it's got its place there. It's like a fun epilogue if you want to finish off the Cornettos with something else. I think it's funny. It's like it's worth checking out.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the IMDb page now. I did not see this, but no, I remember seeing like a trailer for this and like it, popping around like the theaters and stuff like that. But yeah, I never actually did see this. Who else is in it? Jeffrey Tambor. Wow, that's funny. Jane Lynch, Jesse Plemons, Jason Bateman, Bill Hader. Okay, yeah, Joel Truglio, David Koechner. Okay, that's that might be worth watching.
Also in my voodoo, so if you want to have a quick watch on that, feel free.
Okay, but yeah. Okay, so it came out before The World's End. Okay, I see.
Yeah, it's because it was Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's the third one," and people had to be like, "No, this isn't the third one. This false alarm." Okay. And so it got kind of lumped in with the rest of these movies just because they were in it.
Same rating as The World's End, 6.9 on IMDb.
It is funny. It's fun. Jeffrey Tambor is really good in that. Bateman is one of my favorite Jason Bateman roles ever.
Hey, that's saying something.
Yeah. This next one's from Ely. The real dilemma here is trying to decide whether I should call my new band Gary King and the Enablers, the Bermuda Rhombus and the Aquanazis, or Nutball and the Shifty Twins. 5 stars.
That's hilarious. What's the name that he comes up with, where it's like something Eggman? Like there is like I saw like
Smashy Eggman. Yeah.
Smashy Eggman. Yes. Yeah. Nick Frost says like I like still nobody's like throwing out a better name than Smashy Eggman. I love that line.
I love later when they're in the smokehouse and they're realizing that the blanks come out blank. It's like he was fresh, like a man baby, like a maybe. Just those little moments of drunk wisdom, like the whole King gay thing, like just random moments where you're like, yeah, they are 12, 11, 10 pints in right now, while also trying to get away from an alien uprising.
Yeah, no. The stakes are getting raised, and yet the silliness, also.
Oh, for sure. Okay, and this last one is from Lily, ! Who would win? An ancient, ultra-advanced alien network that invented modern technology as we know it and is hell-bent on making as many civilizations conform as feasibly possible so they can run their utopia-type society without outside conflict, or one drunk man having a midlife crisis. 4.5 stars. We all know.
I like it.
You just get the king of doubling down in an argument, put him up against an alien network, and they're just gonna get fucking tired of him.
Man, people are funny. I just like, yeah, I love the one line or two line like little like reviews on Letterboxd. Like there was one. Man, I'm gonna try to scroll and find it like really quickly. But yeah, just like the creativity to just kind of like let me take this movie and just like boil it down to like it's like two. Oh, it's arms as legs, 4 stars. or sorry, it's other way around. Yeah, legs as arms, 4 stars. Yeah, it's like you have to have seen it. Obviously, to be like, what? Like, yeah, what the hell are they talking about? But yeah, that's such a good bit.
Oh, yeah, in that moment. I love just a moment of Gary's true colors when Sam's like knocked to the ground and it looks like he's gonna go help her up, and he's like, "Chuck us a cig, will you?" She just gives him the cigarettes and she helps herself up.
So good.
Yeah, The World's End is just a blast. Anything you'd like to add before we sign off here?
No, I think we got to everything. No, it's a good pick. It was fun to revisit. And yeah, be brought back to that first time I saw it in theaters. So I just remember like getting home and just being like, man, that was cool. That was like a really cool movie. Like I had not seen the first 2, so I was like, yeah, I'm really into that. So then going back and watching those, definitely, yeah, that definitely is fun. And shout out to my old roommates at the time, Gabe. He had seen Hot Fuzz, and so he's like, oh, dude, yeah, you'd love this. And then we both watched Shaun of the Dead. So it was just like, yeah, this is great. So no, they're a really good movie. It was a good one. I'm glad you had it on your list.
Oh yeah. No, I do have a fond memory of it was 2013, so it was like right near the end of high school. The World's End, it came out on Blu-ray, and I immediately picked it up. And then I went to my friend Ellie's house, and we watched it. And she picked up mint ice cream, which is what the flavor is supposed to be. The mint Cornetto movie. Shaun of the Dead is the strawberry one because of all the blood. Hot Fuzz is the blue one, the regular flavor because blue police force, and then sci-fi green mint. So World's End. But she got mint ice cream. We watched the movie, had a blast, and just hung out, and it was a good time. I haven't thought about that in a while.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's why we do this, right? Like to elicit, to like remember these things. Like make real life memories out of this stuff. It's awesome. Yeah, that's why we love this stuff.
Oh yeah, this one's loaded with memories. This was so much fun. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you like the show, feel free to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Filmgazm Productions. If you want to suggest films for us to check out, you can email us at filmgazm@gmail.com, or, of course, send us a message through the socials. Check out our Letterboxd accounts for daily reviews. You can search me at Connor95, and in my friends list, you can find the rest of the team. Check out our website, filmgazm.com, where I have a link to that Letterboxd. If you want to read reviews, you can also find articles, trailers of upcoming films, and every episode of our show. If you'd like to become a monthly donor to Filmgazm Productions, feel free to click on the link in the episode description. From there, click on support this podcast. You can choose to donate $1 a month, $5 a month, or $10 a month. We appreciate any donations you think we might deserve. Thanks to the entire Filmgazm team for their constant friendship and contributions to the show. Thanks to Cooley Cal for our awesome theme music, and thanks to you for checking out our show. Our Best of 2010 series continues next week with Austin's number 9, the 2019 independent drama Waves. Sure to be an emotional episode. I know he loves this movie dearly, and it's gonna be a ride. This will be my second time with this film, and whew.
It is heavy, yes.
Yeah, indeed. Remember that life does not end with the end of high school. Your life can change whenever you want to change it, and your past does not dictate your future. Also, just some good advice: be nice to your friends. They're your friends for a reason.
We all need them.
Yeah, we all need someone to take our bullshit. Take it easy, keep watching movies, and we'll see you next week.